Welcome to the Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast, a podcast we are seeking to lead change while also seeking to understand. We are also here as a platform for leaders to come together, to unite, to develop and empower other leaders in the areas of business, family, faith, and community. I am your host, Lafayette Lane, joined by my co-host, John LeBron. Today, we are joined by a special guest all the way from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, Vivian Acquah, who is an inclusive workplace wellness advocate. She also advises managers on how to keep their team members engaged, energized, and safe in a sustainable manner. Vivian is also making topics related to workplace wellness and DEI accessible to everyone. She provides people with the right tools at the right time to embrace inclusive changes. She also motivates people to think consciously and inspires them to take action. Today, she has joined us right here on Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast to have a conversation about amplifying diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Let's get right into the conversation. Vivian, again, thanks for coming on. Let's get started. Let's tell our audience a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
First of all, I want to say, wow. I mean, starting a conversation with a very enlightening prayer, a very inspiring prayer. And then, on top of that, the way you introduced me. So thank you for having me and thank you for this conversation. My name is Vivian Acquah, and I'm indeed in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, where when you hear my last name, Aqua means water. And at the moment, I'm putting out fires related to workplace wellness and diversity, equity, and inclusion, where my zone of genius lies into preventing those fires from happening, because there's so much going on in the world. There's so much going on in the workplace. And if we can prevent fires that are related to diversity, equity, and inclusion from happening in a workplace, companies will be thriving, people will be thriving, and that's where I want to go as well.
Wow, you talk about our introduction. That just woke me up. You said your last name means water and you putting out fires. That's a drop the mic moment. I love that.
Thank you.
So your specialty is about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And I think that word diversity is kind of like a buzzword in 2021. And I think we just throw it around. Few knows what it really means. And so can we just start with the foundational, what does the diversity mean and what does that look like?
Okay, there's something that I have to warn you about. I don't know if I shared it with you when I approached you, but I talk about food. And the way that I talk about food is maybe a way that your listeners or maybe you are snacking that food. But I warned you, I told you. The way that I look into diversity is the way that you are creating your best carrot cake, right? You need to have your different ingredients for your carrot cake to be awesome as much. But one thing that we are forgetting is just putting in the diverse ingredients won't solve the problem. And this is what's happening right now in the workplace, assuming that when you hire people from diverse background, people from diverse sexes, religion, diverse, neurodiverse thinking even, you cannot just put them there and assume that they will magically become a carrot cake. You need to put some steps into place for them to be that awesome carrot cake that you all and I am craving for.
I love it. I love it. So what are those ingredients? Because when I think of diversity, I think people just think of, let me just put it this way, because this is our podcast, we're authentic. Hire more Black people.
Yeah.
More people, more minorities, more people of color. And hey, now we have a diverse culture. Now we're a diverse company. We believe in diversity and equity. And I think that's where it starts and stops for a lot of
that's when the fire starts happening, right? Because you cannot place, like I said, you cannot place all the different ingredients into the bowl and assume that the magic will happen. Assume that the carrot cake will be created, magically will appear, right? Another thing that is missing in the workplace is realizing to be able to create that carrot cake, you need to have different tools. You need to provide the equity part where maybe the carrot needs a grade, maybe the raisins, they need different steps to be able to participate in the carrot cake, or maybe the eggs, right? The eggs also need some TLC in this whole process so that they will be able to face the barriers that some of us might facing, right? People with diverse backgrounds, but also people from definitely from minority groups or marginalized groups are dealing with different barriers. And if you are not acknowledging that, if you're not providing the tools for them to be able to thrive, but also for them to be able to level up, then that's a part that you're missing out. And then the effort that a lot of companies are doing right now is focus on hiring as much as they can, or focus on the inclusive recruiting, and not realizing that they are leaking talent, they are leaking money, they are literally throwing money away because the main focus is on bringing those people with the diverse backgrounds in, and not having tools and system in place about the culture. What are you doing about the culture, right? What is your oven temperature? How does your kitchen look like, right? Because if your oven temperature is too high, what will happen to that carrot cake? It will burn off. Or maybe it will look, amazing from the outside, but when you cut it open, it looks messy from the inside because you haven't set that right oven temperature and also haven't set the right standards. What are you using to create that best oven temperature so that everybody can thrive in that workplace?
I love that last piece you ended on about the interior exterior, because many companies focus on, let's just have a good PC look. So if it looks,
your ads look diverse,
it looks okay, right? We'll throw some color in on the ads. We'll throw some color in on the department. We'll hire one department head here, but then you still go inside, as you said, and there are fires everywhere. How can you create that culture? A company that is desiring to change their culture, what can they do to not just have the outside look of diversity, but have that internal culture?
It first starts with raising awareness what the company wants, right? What is it that the people want as well? Include the people in the different conversations as well. And a lot of companies or a lot of managers are looking to the high-end tech companies like Google or like Facebook or like Microsoft. But if you don't have the budget that they have to be able to tweak and to be able to craft your diversity journey, then look into your own budget, right? Where are you? Ask your people, what do they want? What are the top 5 things that they want the company to focus on, so that you are open and transparent about what you're doing. And I encourage you to start from the inside before you go announcing it public, saying that the next 5 years, this is what we're going to do. This is where we'll be. But instead of communicating that inside first, do the steps inside first. And then after 6 months, then you go show this is what we are doing to achieve the 5-year goal. And this is what we already done to achieve the 5-year goal. I want to see more action, less talk. There is enough talk already.
So you had mentioned something about they have to change their standards, was the word you had used before. Like, can you kind of outline a few, like if I'm a company and I say, okay, our vision is we need to make sure that our company, and this is right off just top of my head, I guess, is equal opportunity, and we are promoting people within the company, but it's based on, obviously we're looking at the standard work things and so forth, but we want to make sure that as a company, and as you mentioned, coming together internally, what do we want to look like? So all the different sexes, different cultural and racial backgrounds, and all those types of things, right? Religious backgrounds, all those things are included. Because on one hand, somebody will say those things shouldn't matter. And I get what they're saying by saying that. But at the same time, I feel like if we don't have intent to make sure that they're important, then we kind of miss the boat and go right back to where we started. Does that make sense? I hope
It
that didn't come
totally
off
makes sense. No,
incorrectly.
it totally makes sense. I mean, if you're assuming, and I make it very simple, if you have a coloring page and you don't give certain guidelines, or you don't share, this is what diversity looks like, this is what inclusion looks like, this is what equity looks like, and this is what we are doing to make it possible to let everybody feel like they belong in this workplace, then you're leaving that coloring page open for people to fill in their own Disney story, or to create their own Disney story. What you are creating can be different what I am creating. And also for the people that are, I know that the word privileges is a word that people sometimes cringe, but know that I have privileges as well. Everybody have privileges as well. But to realize that there is a white privilege in the conversation, where only based on your color, the color of your skin, the doors are opening for you, no matter what your background is, just because you're white, and the doors are closed for me just because I'm Black. We need to have more of these conversations, what it means to be the other, but also to realize that some people are dealing with 10,000 more barriers than the other people, and to just say that you don't have to say that, or it's a given. It's not a given for a lot of people. It's not a given because some people don't understand the challenges people are facing when they come from an underrepresented group.
Yeah, I feel like for the longest time we've said things like people should be colorblind, essentially. But right, you've seen that, heard that? Maybe that's just me. And it's like basically what they mean by that is somebody's skin tone shouldn't matter. And so I understand the intent. What I've been teaching my kids is like, because that's kind of, when you say that, I feel like that's somebody's intent might be correct, but I feel like it gives the wrong message. I feel like instead of that meaning that you don't see somebody's color on their skin, I'm like, well, but that's part of the person, what makes them beautiful. And so instead, I think of saying we should all be colorblind, because I feel like that almost makes people feel ignored. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. Instead,
no, you're ignoring my background. You're ignoring my superpower. You're ignoring, so much more about me. And I understand that from the people. I mean, I have these heart-to-heart conversations with.
And I'm sure a white dude came up with that thing.
I don't know. I can only.
Yes, you do, Vivian. Yes, you do.
Speculate.
I can only talk about what I do know, and you have to be very careful to who you say these comments, to who you are saying that you are colorblind, because I am very open. I will stop you and have a conversation and tell you that when I go through the same door as you, I am dealing with barriers just because of the color of my skin. So you are saying that you don't see color. I understand that you don't want my color to be a blocker for us to establish a relationship. But then again, the hurdles that I'm facing just because I'm a Black woman, I also want you to acknowledge that. I'd rather have you say that you don't want color to be a blocker for us to have that connection. But I want you to be aware that I am Black. I'm a Black woman. And for you to say that you are not seeing that is for you to erase my identity, erase what makes me unique as well.
Correct. Yes. So I'm trying to teach my kids that instead of what everybody says as far as ignoring, I'm like, well, we should instead learn to appreciate. Yeah. Right. And appreciate, as you said, the superpowers. Go to experience different cultures. Even like we have cultural festivals here in Dayton, Ohio, where thousands of people show up, and I never heard of it until a handful of years ago when one of my Kenyan friends brought me with him to this festival. And I'm thinking, it was 10 minutes from my house. How have I never heard of this? But you go and you experience, and all people are representing different countries and so forth, and you can see like different foods and dances and things that they do there. And instead of saying this is weird, you say, wow, this is really cool. Yeah. I don't understand all of it. I don't have to, but we need to just appreciate the differences and understand that instead of acting like they don't exist, to create some fake equality, maybe we should understand that those differences can actually can strengthen us. As you said, if I word this properly, you don't want someone to ignore that, like how you appear going into an interview. I would think that they should understand that, hey, there's things about you and your background that could enhance the company, not just that they want to ignore them.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why I believe that this whole conversation about bias, or let's do a one, I call them the one night stand training, DEI training, where you can tick off the box because everybody has done a bias training. But you have to realize, I wish that when I go to the gym, that my body looks like Naomi Campbell, but it doesn't work out like that. I have to train. I have to train for that. I have to exercise. I have to eat right. We have to keep seeing the work that we're doing for diversity, equity, and inclusion as a work, as a continuous marathon, a way for you to dance away through the culture, but also understand that it's a everyday thing. It's an all year thing. It goes beyond the age of the company. So for companies or for managers and people not to realize that it's upon them. Everybody has a role to play when it comes to inclusion, but everybody also needs to be activated. They need to be empowered to understand that as well.
On your website, you talked about racism in the workplace, and you broke race down as an acronym. Can you just break that down for us? That race acronym, what that stands for?
I have to peek because it's a while ago that I shared that, but just a minute.
I'll read it off for you if you want me to.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So the race acronym, the R is reducing. Lord, I just lost my place. Okay, just a second here.
So the R is reducing anxiety about talking about race anyway. There is a lot of hurdles, and also understand that it depends to who you're talking to. And I want both parties, so the people that are, let's say, making racist slurs, but also the people that are in the victim space. I want both parties to be sitting at the table and understand that we need to reduce something. We need to unlearn about the way we engage in this conversation. And I do feel like we need to have these conversations with a mediator, with a facilitator, somebody who can neutralize the lava, because this conversation in itself, it's like the floor is literally lava when we are having these conversations. The A stands for accept that anything related to race is either going to be invisible or visible. There's something here in the Netherlands. I don't know how much you know about the Netherlands, but let's say in December, for Black people, there is this holiday going on with blackfacing Black Pete. It's called Zwarte Piet. Don't ask me why they are doing that. It's not my tradition, and I distance from that. But instead of now, more and more companies are distancing them away from that. But recently, I found out an advert where they are portraying Mexicans, even though they don't talking Mexicans, they have the lowriders, they have their gang outfit, and I can definitely share the link of that ad. And I told this ad agency and also shared it online, saying that this is an invisible black facing that you're doing, brown facing that you're doing. So meanwhile, this is happening in Europe. I know the Netherlands is very progressive, but there are things here that are happening here where they are hurting people.
Vivian, before you go any further, I know what blackface means. Our audience may not know what that means because we see it in cultural appropriation in America all the time, and it goes unseen. Can you let our audience know what blackface means?
So blackfacing is mimicking a Black person by putting in some black schmink on your face and basically mimicking them, right? So in the past, I think in the early 1900s or 2000s, 1900s, it was something that was happening in the US as well. If you look at Aunt Jemima, which now is different, right? She was also being blackface. So there's a lot of hurt in going to that when people are reenacting certain cultures, certain people, just out of fun. And it's not fun. you're dehumanizing people, you're humiliating people, you're humiliating a race, and it's not fun at all. I know that in the US it's banned. Now the rest of the world.
Yeah.
If people don't know, it was ingrained through a lot of like youth cartoons and stuff for years and years and years. Most of those have been sort of stripped. But I remember as a kid seeing them, not thinking much of it. I didn't even know that was a term. But when you look back, you thought, wow, it was kind of intertwined all through just everything that kids are watching and so forth.
But we've also seen it recently, and that's that cultural appropriation, not just the blackface, but as Vivian pointed out, how Black women look, their braids, things like that is looked down upon. But then you have a Khloe Kardashian that will go and braid her hair and profit off of what is deemed as ugly for the Black woman in the Black culture.
Yeah.
But I'll let you go ahead, Vivian.
Going to race, I was at the C. So C is call your internal and external allies for help. And that's where I believe that it helps to have a mediator, a facilitator, but also it helps when you're having these conversations. Have these conversations in a group, in a small, intimate group setting where you are intentional about the conversation that you want to have, intentional about where you want to see the conversation leading, intentional about doing better. That's where it stands. And E, expect that you need to provide some answers, some tools, some skill-based framework. So from E is where do you want to be? Where do you want it to go? And what to do after? Because now that you are aware of bias, now that you are aware of maybe the whole racial thing, now that you are aware of all the things that might be hurting people like microaggression, what will you do next? What is your microaction that you are going to take to do better?
You said microaggression. What do you mean by that?
Microaggression, the way that I describe microaggression is putting your hand in a beehive, and not with normal bees, but killer bees. And every time somebody is making a comment that might be a joke, but isn't, a comment that is maybe a compliment, but from the inside, it's an insult. And also literally stepping on people's toes. So an example as you speak well for an African person. You don't look like the most, African people, Black women, or where are you from? Where are you really from, right? If you want to know where my roots lay, ask me, where are your roots from? Ask me what food is maybe popular in your origin, right? Ask me more. Ask the personal questions instead of stepping on my pinky toe. And it's painful. It's painful and it's hurtful. And the moment that different people are asking or making these, small comments, I see them as stabs. I see them like being attacked by killer bees. It's hurtful and it's impacting the mental well-being, it's impacting the physical well-being, and it's also impacting the career well-being as well.
So how do we, if we look at our reducing anxiety, I wrote the question, how do we have a conversation without an open conversation without shaming for the wrong sort of questions or so I don't, if that makes sense. So I know totally if I'm sitting in a conversation or even here on a conversation, you're trying to be careful with how you word things because you don't want somebody to be like, obviously John's a racist, right? And you're thinking, no, I just said something incorrect. And so how do you have that conversation? How in a work environment though, which is going to be way more tense than my own podcast. How do you have that conversation? Maybe it's with the mediators you're talking about, but how do you have that conversations there without someone saying, well, you can't ask that question like that, or you can't, because I think as soon as you start attacking somebody for asking the wrong questions, those types of things, it immediately shuts down the conversation when they may have had good intent. They just had a really bad delivery.
That's where it goes wrong. When you say attack, I feel like we need to learn unlearn the way that we think we are giving feedback and learn how to give appropriate feedback. Sometimes when it may be from the victim's perspective that they think they need to address it by butchering, the person who's saying that. But then again, are you better than the person who's making those slurs? And also from the other side, right, you need to understand that certain comments cannot be made. And I feel like we need to create that right oven temperature. So have within the company, there have to be policies, there have to be things shared within the company that is saying that if you want to address racism, for instance, try to address it in this way, or address it in a way where it's a one-on-one conversation. It's not a debate, it's not a discussion, but a one-on-one conversation. And if needed, ask for a facilitator, ask for a mediator as well. If you feel like the oven or your oven temperature, your personal oven temperature is too hot because your mind is blowing, I'm like that, I need some woosah time to have that conversation, especially when it touches me on a personal level. I'm not the person who's going to address it on day one because I need to deactivate my own emotions and my own senses, because otherwise I'll be talking with lava, and that's not helpful. That's not helpful with the conversation that I'm having. So sometimes we need to understand that some people are there and they can address things immediately, but some people need some cool off time. And also, this is an ideal part for allies to step up. If you see something, hear something, or sensing something, do something about it. Address it in a political way, constructive way, where you take that person aside and say, this is what I'm seeing, and this is not, we don't tolerate this behavior. But I also feel like from the company side, there needs to be more anti-racism policies. What is tolerated, what is not, what is a big no-no. And I'm not saying that you have to fire that person, because then you lose the opportunity to educate them, to raise awareness. I want people to raise awareness and to understand that what you're doing is impacting somebody. So what you're doing, you're erasing that person for being themselves.
What are some common biases that you see in the workplace presently, and how can we disarm those biases?
Great question.
I see a lot of likability bias when it comes to job ads, setting high expectations. For instance, if there is a new role that is just being created and it's maybe 1 or 2 years old, asking for the expectation for a Harvard education or an MBA education and at least 10 years of experience. I mean, someone even, from time to time, I see people on LinkedIn calling out these absurd requirements because it's not realistic. And the comment of saying, I can't find diversity. We have Google, we have LinkedIn, we have Twitter. If you can't find diversity, then that means that something wrong with your network and you need to act upon something. You need to do something. You need to hire a DEI coach who will tell you the truth, but also will open your vision, opening a little bit more up so you understand that you need to tap into different talent pools to get diverse people or to get people with diverse background within your company as well. And that's number one. Number two is hiring people just for, checking the box because you want to diversify your talent pool. Okay. But what are you going to do to help them stay within the company? How are you going to accelerate them? How are you going to amplify their voice? How are you going to create that psychological safety that is missing? Even now, when I know that in the US, there are companies out there, they are saying that the doors or the offices are open, but a lot of women, a lot of Black women don't feel safe coming back. They feel safer more now that they are working from home. And I would say have that flexibility, offer that flexibility. I've seen LinkedIn sharing that they are offering flexibility to independently, whereas a Facebook or other companies are not at that stage. And I want to challenge people to be more at that stage as well.
You emphasize rather that word amplify.
Yeah.
How can leaders amplify the voices of those in their organization who seemingly feel like their voice have been silent?
Have that conversation with them, know them, activate your empathy button. Know what is missing, know what they need, because not a lot of people want to be able to amplify in the same way that you are amplifying as a leader. Maybe they want to blog, talk about what is happening within the company in a positive way. Maybe they want to advocate in a different way. So ask them, what do they need? But also be really authentic about what you are willing to hear from them, right? I want people to not be how do you say, for how are you? No, what is it that you need, and how can I support you to be better, to be great?
Go ahead, bro. I have no question on that. I'm just marinating on each part of the conversation, because I always go back to how do we. My questions always stem from not like. I do a lot of information security stuff during the day, and a lot of companies want to say, "Hey, we're secure." So what they do is they pull up a checklist of things that are required, and they sort of check a box. And one of the things I do is training, and I say, "Hey, just having a one-day training a year is just checking a box that we trained everybody, so we are cyber secure." And I say, no, it needs to be a continuous program. It needs to be a monthly thing. It needs to be ingrained in the culture of what you do. Early on, it's hard. Early on, it's uncomfortable. And every small training that we do, every conversation that we have, every step does not feel normal. But over time, you strengthen your cyber muscles into where eventually it doesn't feel like you're trying at all, but you're doing the right steps. And so I feel like it's very similar in that this cannot be a one-time DEI training that you have every November. So you can say that our organization is no longer racist because we have hired a few people who are from different backgrounds, and we do annual training. But it has to be something that we're implementing and continuously talking about with the right intentions, not just so we can advertise for jobs. So we can go ahead.
No, and I want to say something about that. I see companies having a employee resource group. So an employee resource group is a group within a company where people can talk, feel supported, but also can level up, learn from each other, mentor each other, sponsor each other. And when I say sponsoring as knowledge, sponsoring is as bringing somebody else in a different environment, opening the doors for them, sharing your Rolodex so that they can see, the environments that you are walking in. And employee resource group, when done right, can create that muscle training that is needed within the DEI space, because they have monthly, weekly, bi-weekly activities that you can join. So if your company has an ERG or has a different employee resource group or business resource group, there are different names for that. But if your company has a group where there are monthly activities for you to do better and to become more inclusive, try to join, try to participate, not from the sideline, but try to participate as one of the volunteers that is doing that, because it will help your career as well.
Now, we talked about the diversity and the inclusion. How can we really focus in on that third piece, that equity in the workplace? How can that be provided?
I believe that equity can be provided to mentoring. So either you become a mentor or either you become a mentee. And the reason why I say both is both are learning, right? As a mentor, you are learning the barriers, the challenges somebody is facing, but also as a mentee, you are learning to accelerate your career journey because your mentor is giving you a different perspective, let's say a perspective for you to accelerate in your journey. And this whole mentorship, it feels like it's only for a certain kind of people. And I want it to be more accessible for everybody in the company. So What I would encourage the listeners to do or the watchers to do is, if you don't have a mentor, look somebody up. Be intentional about why you need a mentor. If you don't know a why, find out your why. What is it that, where do you want to be? And find out a role model within the company, or maybe outside of a company, or within a different business network. Ask them if they want to be a mentor, but also give a valid reason into why you think that they are your ideal mentor. You never know. You might hear a yes after 10 no's, but still, you might hear a yes.
Now, we've talked about diversity. Who should be leading those trainings? Because I feel like the ones that need training in the diversity are the ones who are trying to lead the diversity training.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have mixed feelings about this. So what I often see is white men, white women given the training, but as a white woman or a white person, you don't have my lived experience, the lived experience of a Black person. I'm not saying that people from, white people cannot share or cannot do the training. I want to challenge companies by bringing in the different lenses that is needed, because the different lenses that are in your company, that's where the people are being relatable. That's where you can create that connection. So if you have fires related to the Black community within your company, it's not fair to bring in a white person who's going to share a different lens, different perspective. So I wouldn't say no to a white coach. I would say add on a different coach, because that's where I am able to look with you in the mirror, give you my perspective, but also listen to your perspective as well. And through our conversation, through challenging ourselves, that's where I want to open up your lens as well into the challenges that people are facing.
So how often should these trainings take place? Should this be quarterly, yearly, monthly, weekly?
And when you're referring to these trainings, what is it? Make it a little bit more specific. Is it training for the leadership, training for the people?
So the diversity training, not just corporately, but even on a micro level within each department.
Yeah.
How often should that take place?
I would say definitely once per month, but also realize you don't have to do a training each month. You can also have conversations. You can also have a lunch and learn, where you bring in a different topic so that you can open people their eyes. And what I challenge company with is focus on your top 3 things that the people need from you and that wants you to do better. And within those 3 topics, you can narrow it down to, or you can break it up into little topics that you are addressing. So every week or every 2 weeks, you have a highlight topic that you are addressing. So instead of focusing only on pride in June, for instance, have that conversation in another month, or focusing on Black excellence only on February. Have that conversation throughout the year, and have that conversation where there's an intersectionality. Bring in that. So I'm realizing that I'm bringing in a different word, and you're going to ask me, what is intersectionality? So let me explain that. Intersectionality is a crossroad where you are peeling off the different layers that I have. So I'm a Black woman. My roots are from Ghana, so I'm African. I am a mother. That's also another layer. I am born and raised in the Netherlands. That's also another layer. But I'm also a nerd. That's also another layer, right? So there are different layers upon me that we need to realize that there are different ways to connect ourselves, but also different ways to separate ourselves. And I want us to find that connectivity that we have, because I'm not only a woman, I'm different people within one person.
So outside of training per se, like monthly training, I'm not saying that's not important. What kind of systems or like structures or things can we implement besides, hey, let's do our monthly training? Because sometimes I'm saying training is good, but we don't want to get into the routine of a monthly training so we can say that we're compliant. So what kind of systems and things can we implement? Maybe that's too deep for this part of the conversation, but can you talk to that a little bit?
Think about starting a book club. Read a book together, right? Read a book together and share the lessons learned, right? Share the different perspectives that you have from reading that book. And from there on, continue learning. I want to challenge people to educate themselves. Start with your own education. And educating yourself is not asking a person from an underrepresented group to share their personal experiences, because you might be tapping into them opening up Pandora's box, them reliving a trauma that's not necessary to be relived in. So ask for their permission first. And if they say no, respect them, or otherwise look me up on LinkedIn. I share a lot of content for you to challenge yourself to do better. I'm asking you to commit to at least a micro action once per quarter to challenge yourself to do better, to unlearn certain things that you learn that you think that is inclusive but actually hurting people, and activate yourself, commit to something where you are taking steps to become inclusive. So a tip that I can definitely share is LinkedIn has a simple name feature. A lot of people don't realize that, but this feature is so powerful because this is a way for you to learn how to pronounce someone's name. In the beginning, Lafayette asked me, "How do I pronounce your name?" How often are people asking you, "How do I pronounce your name?" And also realizing that in different countries, the name pronunciation is different. And this simple tool that LinkedIn has, you can easily learn how to pronounce somebody's name without making that slip. Because if you are pronouncing my name wrong, I am like so not interested in having that conversation with you. And it's something that shouldn't be there, because you're stepping literally on somebody's pinky toe, and that's painful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Vivian, leave our audience one last piece of advice, and it could just be from the heart, wherever you feel it, you're led to say. Leave us with a last word.
Yeah, I want to challenge you all to challenge yourself, but also find an accountability partner who's doing the exercise with you. Do something where you are making it better for somebody else. You are doing something that is better for somebody else. And like I said, I share a lot of content where you can, challenge yourself to do better. But I also feel like read a book, watch a movie, watch the 13th, or if you want to go a little bit deeper, watch This Is Us, not alone, with a few people as well, and have that conversation, or watch Uncoded Bias, Coded Bias.
Stay connected with Vivian. You can do that several ways. Her LinkedIn profile, she's mentioned her name there, Vivian Acquah. You also can follow her on her Twitter handle is at Viva La Vive NL, VIVALA VIVENL is her Twitter handle. That is also her YouTube name there, her YouTube channel there. And also she has an amazing podcast, Let's Humanize the Workplace Podcast. And she's also providing something very special for our listening audience. She has a DEI summit that is coming up September 27th through September 29th. And she has graciously given us 10 tickets to be shared with our audience. We will put that link in the show notes with this episode. If you're interested in attending that Amplified DEI Summit, I highly recommend that. I'm sure today's episode was just a sliver of what they'll be sharing there at the summit to 2021. That is September 27th through September 29th. As always, stay connected to us here on Unscripted on our various social media platforms. Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast is our name on our Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn page. Our Twitter handle is at Unscripted Lead. Our Instagram is at Unscripted Leadership. And those of you that are part of the streaming audience, a part of our listening audience, wherever you get your podcast provided, you can find our podcast there, from Apple to Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Type in Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. You can find us there. Also, connect with us on our website. Sign up for a mastermind group where you can connect with diverse leaders, diverse thought leaders there, peer-to-peer connection. You also can be poured into and also pour out into others' leaders there on unscripted-leadership.com. You also can sign up for our email group to help you stay connected and stay tuned in to what we have going on here at the podcast. And you also will receive a 10% off merch promo code when you do so. Again, we say thank you to our special guest, Vivian Acquah, for joining us today to have this amazing, incredible conversation. And she has a, thank you so much, Vivian. Thank you so much. No one's ever given us an awesome card, so that you hold a special place in our heart now. Thank you for having this special conversation about amplifying diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. As always, we pray that you be the leader that God has called you to be. We're here to build bridges and not walls. Bridges connect and walls divide. Until next time, God bless you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.